Welcome to Mithraics Explained. You're watching the voice of the Fat Mantis. In Raised by Wolves, the inciting incident is the conflict, a war so deadly it destroys the surface of Mother Earth, making it uninhabitable. The two contenders in this war are one religious group known as the Mithraics, and the other one being the Atheists. Now we're going to tear apart, analyze, and hopefully predict the maneuvers and the basis of the Mithraics here in this video. And don't worry, there will be an atheist video down the line, but before we get into this, I need to ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and actually, very importantly, comment, because I love hearing from you guys. But it's very important that we support this channel and we make Voice of the Fat Mantis a thing, because we don't want the next episode that you get to see the Fat Mantis in is a video of bum fights. Okay, let's get into the Mithraics. Now, the Mithraics seem to be a religious group and the dominant group on Mother Earth during the war versus the Atheists. Now, it's not just a religious struggle, it is very clearly a class struggle, as in the atheists are clearly uneducated and impoverished. It is possible that because the atheists are wealthy and educated and actually use a slave species of androids that we've seen as service droids, industrial droids, necromancers, even to fight their wars for them, that they don't need working class people. It's possible they completely eliminated it from that themselves. The war depicted in Raised by Wolves is so heinous that literally everything is uninhabitable, and pretty much all infrastructure and, most importantly, wealth of the planet has been utterly destroyed. Now, we do know that the atheists are vile creatures. They're not the good guys in this, even though the Mithraics have dirty hands as well. We know for a fact that the atheists use child soldiers and suicide bombers. As a matter of fact, within the comic book, they actually state that they use so many suicide bombers that the planet was blanketed in explosions. Now, obviously, this is a metaphor or an analogy. Clearly, they couldn't have covered every inch of it. But that's how frequently they use such vile tactics. Now, we know from the beginning of the show that nuclear war was used. Nuclear bombs probably dropped from both sides if possible. But another important thing came up in Season 2 where we discover that it was the Mithraics who used weapons to poison the air, to make it unbreathable. And using these type of weapons too often has literally brought the end of civilization. Now, clearly, this is a very important event. The Mithraics get their name from an ancient but dead religion of monotheists who are actually competitors to monotheism with early Christians. It came from stories from both out of Greek mythology mixed with some Persian ideas to follow the story of Mithras, their god. A lot of people believe that this story, Raised by Wolves, the Mithraics are an alternate history of sorts. What if the Mithraics dominated Christianity and became the dominant people? And I'm going to refute that. I actually believe that the Mithraics, at first hand, seem nothing like actually the Mithraic mysteries that we know of, but are also just a thinly veiled attempt to talk about Christians. Their religion mimics Christianity down to a T, including an obsession with piety. They have an all-powerful priesthood that everyone has to bow down to, which you find in a lot of Orthodox Christianity, mainly Catholicism and Greek, Russian, and Eastern Orthodox religions. They also have highly ritualized things such as communion, baptism, and confession. Constant preoccupation with purity, which actually the original Mithraic religion never had. Christianity did exist and was the dominant religion on Earth. How do I know this? Now, I'm going to give you two great examples. The two major examples I have to say is, number one, in episode 2, Marcus and Sue, before they had their facelift, they enter a Mithraic home and they see a painting that's done in a Renaissance painting style. And it depicts what seems to be a crucified Jesus being tossed into a chasm by some priests, some hooded figures. And above them is the shining light of a sun that looks like the Mithraic symbol. And obviously, this isn't from ancient days. The style and workmanship on it would have to have existed during medieval times, at least post-Renaissance. meaning that the Renaissance did happen. People learned how to paint like that, and therefore normal history already happened. This is celebrating a later event, the domination of Christianity, usurping Christ as the main religion of Western civilization and replacing it with Sol. Now, the second exhibit I have to say has to do with Kepler 22b. Kepler 22b in the show is depicted as a horrible, disgusting, desertous place with giant holes and caverns in it, very little oceans, and the few oceans they have are acidic and horrible. It is a wretched, horrible place you would never want to live. Now, the funny thing is, Kepler 22b is actually a real place. That's right, it exists. NASA has already found it. They have images of it, and they're studying it right now. It seems to be a super-Terran planet, means it's a lot like Earth. And it actually is completely blue and filled with oceans. It's in a water world, much like Earth is. They speculate that this blue chemical is very likely to be water, drinkable water. Let's hope. But people believe that it is inhabitable. So what am I suggesting here? The idea is that somewhere between 2022, where Kepler 22b is a beautiful oceanist planet, many years later down the line, whenever Raised by Wolves takes place, is when disastrous things happen to either dry up the oceans or destroy it, possibly nuclear war. So what am I getting at here? What I am suggesting is that we're not in an alternate history, we're in second history. I am suggesting that the civilization the Mithraics build is a civilization built on the ashes of our own civilization. That some point in the future of our time, we're going to send astronauts and people to colonize Kepler 22b. Not only were weird genetic experiments like the creation of these snake creatures that come from necromancers would exist, and a lot of these rituals, but I believe the writing and the very basis of the Mithraic religion would be written or created there, perhaps not even intended to create a new religion. But whatever these writings and these ideas came from, and they would eventually take them back to a destroyed Earth and rebuild civilization there, a Mithraic one. And perhaps their Christian roots, that they borrowed these ideas such as confession and baptism and stuff from Christianity in the first place, as we all know that no religion really comes up with rituals on their own. They really are usually taken piecemeal from different pieces. Next, what we know about the Mithraics, very importantly, is the vast technology. They control Earth and the game, such as having arcs, necromancers, because they have superior technology. It's not necessarily out of education. It's things they found in their holy writings. Now, as it turns out, they are so religious, they would look at the schematics and make them frame by frame, never deviating from it. So it's not actually original creations. The Mithraics, by their own confession, do not even know how any of this technology even works. They just follow the recipe and it works out. Campion Sturgis in the story might be one of the only actual Mithraics to actually think about tinkering and altering it around. It's actually fascinating that happened, which leads me to believe that actually the writings that have these schematics may have never intended to be religious texts at all. Now, it's important to point out that every miracle or thing that the entity known that we're calling Sol on Kepler 22b has performed has to do with technology. He's able to rewrite Mother into turning her into a 3D printer to create the said snake. This is a clear indication that these supposed miracles are not miracles at all. They seem to be the work of technology and science, which seems to mean that Sol, the entity, the transmission, or the host, whatever you want to call this entity, is probably technological and probably a quantum computer that was created on Kepler during the genetic experiments that would make the flying snakes that seemed to dominate the surface world in the past. Now, this is what makes the faction known as the Mithraics so lethal. Both the fact that they wield technology that they don't understand, like a teenager who's found his father's gun, but also because they are the masters of these prophecies and all the knowledge in the books. If the books were written about the supercomputer back in the day, the answer to defeating said supercomputer is going to be found within the pages of the Mithraic writings. They are the holders of all the cards, and the atheists are merely playing in a world that the Mithraics have created. Now, if you don't think that is what makes them the most lethal faction on this show, even more deadly than the androids, then you need to work on the idea that the show has been pitching, the idea that faith makes one unstoppable. Now, if you look at it, this is a constantly reoccurring theme in our story, that characters who lose faith or down and out on faith get restored faith, or even those who didn't have faith seem to find it and seem to be unstoppable. They're capable of anything. This is ground into the concept of the prophecy. Now, the prophecy lingers over our heads because each season they keep adding more to it, something that we didn't know. And the original reading of the prophecy was that the prophet will be an orphan boy raised in an empty land. That's all we know, and we know he's meant to be the king. So who will be their next king? And so many characters do all sorts of crazy things under the belief that they are the chosen one. That is what really makes a Mithraic so powerful. The fact that they are believers to a psychotic level. Basically, it's almost like, somebody on meth. No matter how many bullets you put in them, they're going to keep coming at you like they were a Terminator type zombie. Now, in second season, we discover other things, such as the prophet will plant the seed that will grow into the tree of knowledge, and next to the tree of knowledge, they will build a city of peace where the prophet will rule as a king. This remains to be seen, but I noticed that a lot of things that are prophesized don't actually come to fruition till the next season. So hopefully some element of that will raise up. After all, we did see the tree make its illustrious return at the end when the snake dies. It's important to point out that as we've talked about all this supernatural stuff actually being technology, to my understanding, nobody knows any type of science that can actually predict the future. Unless they're going to add time travel to this story, which I really hope they don't, there should be no reason that writings based on the technological shenanigans of scientists on Kepler 22b back in the day should actually be able to predict anything. It might be wishful thinking or whatever, but there should be no reason that they know what's going on. However, that doesn't matter. That won't stop somebody with faith, which is why you need to beware of the Mithraic or any character who follows Soul in Raised by Wolves. But the real question is, what do you think? Do you think the atheists actually can stand against the Mithraics? Am I missing any puzzles or mysteries about the Mithraics? And what do you think about my idea about second history? Please let me know down in the comments. I love doing these videos. I'm going to do more analyses and explained heading forward. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. And stay subscribed so you can keep getting all the videos and information here at Voice of the Fat Mantis. It is my profound pleasure to make these videos for you. I love you all. Until next time, ciao for now.